I grew up in a peaceful village in southern Nigeria. Life was simple. We woke up early to fetch water, cook, and farm. Children played in the sand. Women worked hard, yet carried themselves with pride and honor. They were the backbone of our homes. People from other villages spoke well of our women. They were strong, modest, and full of wisdom. No one ever imagined that would change. In our village, we valued tradition. Boys learned how to farm. Girls learned how to cook, sweep, and help in the market. Our parents taught us to greet elders with respect. Everyone knew their place, and even though we were not rich, we had peace. We celebrated new births, danced at weddings, and mourned together during loss. Our women were always in the center of these things. Our culture was our pride. During festivals, the women tied colorful wrappers and danced with joy. Young girls watched and learned. Marriage was seen as something sacred. A woman's pride was her respect. Elders told us, when a woman loses her shame, she loses her future. We believed it. We lived it. But then, a visitor came from the city. Back then, men and women worked together to keep the family strong. The men cleared the farms and hunted. The women planted, harvested, and sold at the market. They cared for the children and kept the home warm. A woman's pride was not in makeup or clothes. It was in her respect and good name. Marriage was the dream of most young girls. They wanted to be good wives and mothers. I remember the day Ada came back from Lagos. She was once like every other girl in the village, quiet, humble, and hardworking. But when she returned, everything about her was different. Her skin was lighter. Her nails were long and red. She wore trousers and high heels that made noise as she walked. Her eyelashes looked like broomsticks. The boys stared. The girls whispered. The elders frowned. Ada didn't just look different, she acted different too. She no longer greeted elders with both knees. She spoke like someone on TV. "This village is too dry," she said often. She laughed loudly, called the boys broke, and only moved with people who looked like her. She didn't go to the farm, didn't go to church, and always had money. We didn't know where it came from, but we all noticed it. It didn't take long before the village began to talk. The women said Ada was becoming a bad example. The elders said she was bringing shame. Some of the girls admired her boldness, while others were afraid. The young men, especially the jobless ones, watched her in silence. But one thing was sure. Ada had become the center of attention. People didn't know whether to warn her or to follow her. One evening, Ada sat with a group of young girls near the village square. She told them stories of the city. In Lagos, she said, men pay just to take you out. They buy you phones, shoes, even food for your family. The girls listened with wide eyes. Some giggled. Others were shocked. She continued, no stress, just slay and shine. Let men do the work. From that day, the seed was planted. Not long after, one girl followed her to the city. Then another. And then one more. The change was quiet, but real. Soon, 3 girls from our village stopped selling by the roadside. They began to dress like Ada. They stopped greeting elders and stayed out late. Some parents asked questions. Others looked away. They said, she's just going to hustle. Life is hard. But deep inside, they knew what was happening. Slowly, our village began to change. The way the girls dressed changed. Their voices changed. Even their walk changed. They now painted their faces and wore wigs. They laughed at the market women and no longer joined them to trade. You could see it in their eyes. They no longer wanted village life. The new dream was money, fashion, and freedom. We saw it, but many didn't know what to say. Those girls started to bring back things we had never seen before: new phones, perfume, handbags, wigs. They even gave money to their parents. One girl repaired the leaking roof of their house. Another bought clothes for her siblings. People began to say, at least she's helping the family. That's how it started. Little by little, money began to cover shame. What was once wrong started to look okay. Some parents, tired of poverty, stopped asking questions. One mother said, so far she's not stealing, I won't stop her. Another father said, at least we are eating better now. The pain of hunger closed their eyes. They forgot the teachings of our forefathers. Some even began to praise the girls. See how she bought a generator. They said. But the truth was, our village was losing its soul. The young men in the village became angry. They were farmers, Okada riders, or jobless. They could not compete with the rich men who sent money from the city. When they asked the girls out, the girls laughed. You don't even have a smartphone, they said. Many boys began to feel small. Some became bitter. Others just gave up and started drinking palm wine all day. Church was no longer the same. Some girls still came, but dressed like city women, tight clothes, high heels, loud makeup. During praise songs, they danced in ways we had never seen before. The elders looked away. The pastors preached, but some of them were weak. Rumors began to fly. People said, even the pastor is chasing these girls. Sunday no longer felt holy. Soon, we noticed another change. Some girls began leaving the village at night. No one knew where they were going, but they always came back early in the morning. Sometimes in taxis. Sometimes walking barefoot, wigs in hand. Some looked tired, others excited. We pretended not to see. But deep down, we knew. The night had become their office, and the village had become their resting place. One night, a man followed his daughter. What he saw broke him. She was in a cheap hotel room with an old man, someone old enough to be her grandfather. He didn't speak. He just left and cried by the roadside till morning. The next day, he packed his things and left the village. He couldn't bear the shame. Everyone heard the story, but no one dared to speak it out loud. More girls started traveling to nearby towns, Benin, Wari, Asaba. They said they were going to hustle. They came back with new phones, soft skin, and loud confidence. Some stayed for weeks, others for months. But they always returned with more money, more gifts. They looked different each time. Like strangers. And more girls began to follow them. It became the new normal. Then came the older men. Big stomachs, gray hairs, flashy cars. They started visiting the village. Not for farming. Not for business. They came for the girls. They picked them up in tinted cars and dropped them off at night. Some were married men from cities. Some were politicians. The girls called them uncles, but we all knew what they were. Our fathers lost their voice. Our mothers covered their faces. The mothers who still held on to old values began to cry. They said, what happened to our daughters? They remembered when women were proud of hard work. Now they watched as their daughters left the farms for hotel rooms, left markets for men's cars. Some mothers fasted and prayed. Others just gave up. They could not fight the new world that had entered their homes. We called a village youth meeting. We wanted to talk sense into the girls. The boys spoke first. About dignity, about shame, about our future. But the girls laughed. Who dignity help? One of them shouted. If you no get money, no talk to me. The meeting ended in noise. There was no agreement. That day, I knew this battle would be harder than we thought. Things got worse. Boys stopped seeing the girls as future wives. They only wanted to sleep with them and move on. The girls too stopped caring. We're not looking for husbands, they said. We want soft life. Even the elders were afraid to correct them now. Respect left the village like smoke. And once it left, it never came back. A few of the girls started to come back with more than just gifts. They built houses. One of them bought her mother a car. She became a hero in the village. People began to praise her. They said, "Look at what hard work can bring." But none of them asked how she got the money. Some looked the other way. Others began to say, "If you can't beat them, join them." The girls who stayed home, who worked on the farm or stayed in school, started to feel the weight of envy. They were mocked. "Look at her. She's still struggling with yam," they would say. "You don't even have a proper phone, huh?" The old ways were forgotten. The girls with new clothes, expensive shoes, and loud laughter began to rule the streets. The others felt small, useless. The elders gathered many times to talk about what was happening. They discussed how to bring the girls back, how to restore dignity. But there was no solution. The world was changing faster than they could catch up. Some elders still believed that with time, the girls would come to their senses. But others gave up, saying, "The world is changing. We can only watch." One Sunday, Pastor John stood before the congregation. He had always been a gentle man, kind with his words. But that day, his voice shook with anger. "Our daughters are lost," he shouted. "The enemy has entered our homes. We cannot sit and watch as they destroy themselves." The women cried, the men nodded, but the girls just smiled. They didn't care for the sermon. The pastor's words seemed like whispers against the loud world they had embraced. That afternoon, after church, Ada and a few of the girls stood at the entrance of the church, laughing. "Even your church elders want us," one of them said. The other girls laughed, some with boldness, others with a hint of bitterness. It was clear now, there was no shame. No fear. The church had lost its grip on them, and so had the village. The rules we grew up with no longer held any power. The men in the village began to leave their wives. The promise of wealth and youth was stronger than their old vows. Some men would bring home young girls from the city and leave their families without warning. The women were left heartbroken, confused, and ashamed. Yet, even some of the women quietly hoped their daughters would catch a break, like those city girls. Slowly, the idea of family started to break down. Some homes were broken beyond repair. The children of the village began to suffer. They saw their mothers struggle alone while their fathers ran off with younger girls. They witnessed the loud laughter of the city girls, who came and went in fancy cars. Some began to copy their behavior. They skipped school. They dressed in short skirts and tried to act grown up. The younger ones, too, wanted to be like the city girls. They wanted the money, the attention, and the freedom. It was no longer just about fashion. It was about survival in a world that seemed to reward those who could hustle. The girls no longer saw themselves as daughters, sisters, or future wives. They saw their bodies as tools. Some would say, "What do I need a degree for? I can make more money in one night than I would in a year at a job." They used their beauty, their looks, their charm to get what they wanted. They would flirt with the older men, spend nights with them, and then come home with new phones or clothes. The shame was gone. It wasn't about love anymore. It was about getting ahead, and at any cost. The change spread beyond our village. Neighbors started to whisper, calling our home Ashao land, a place where women were no longer respectable. They said the men didn't care about marriage anymore, that all they wanted were young girls. Even the elders from nearby villages shook their heads when they passed through. They told us, "What is happening to your daughters?" The shame that started small began to spread like wildfire, reaching the farthest corners of our community. No one was safe from the judgment anymore. One morning, we woke to a shock. A young girl, Grace, was found lying in a ditch by the roadside. No one knew how she got there. Her clothes were torn, her face bruised. Her eyes were open but empty. She was just a girl, no more than 16. Nobody came to claim her. The whole village stood still, stunned into silence. We all knew the truth. but no one dared to say it out loud. Grace had become a victim of the very world the girls were chasing. She had become nothing more than a body to be used and discarded. Even after Grace's death, there were still some who denied what was happening. She must have been in the wrong place, they said. It's just a bad incident. Others whispered, she was too wild. But deep down, we all knew the answer. Grace had been part of the life the others were leading: money, freedom, and no regard for the price. But her death was the price she paid, and still, some denied it, afraid to face the truth. Weddings became rare in our village. Who would marry the girls now? The men began to look elsewhere, to towns where the girls weren't so lost. Even the ones who came back after the city had chewed them up, broken and empty, couldn't find husbands anymore. They were too far gone. The village elders tried to organize marriages for the decent girls, but the men refused. They feared the new, city girls. They said, how can we trust a woman who has been to the city? Our village had lost its pride, its unity, and even its hope for future marriages. Ada returned to the village one day, but she wasn't the same woman we once knew. She was tired, worn out. Her skin had lost its glow, her eyes seemed empty, and she no longer had the same confident swagger. She had been to the city and returned broken, just like many others before her. Her face no longer carried the pride she once wore. When the young girls saw her, they whispered. Some laughed. They no longer saw her as a role model. Ada had become another lesson, one of what could happen when you chased a dream that didn't last. We started to see the truth in what the elders had warned. Money didn't last. Beauty faded. The city life was nothing but an illusion. The girls who thought they could have it all were left empty. Many came back home, some with children they couldn't care for, others broken by men who had used them. They had tasted freedom, but the cost was high. Those who stayed behind, who worked and kept to the old ways, had learned that a simple life, though hard, had value. The world outside had tempted us, but it had also destroyed what was good. In the years that followed, our village began to heal. Slowly. The girls who had left to chase a different life returned, some with regrets, some with children, and some with nothing. But we started to rebuild. The elders took the lead, guiding the younger ones back to the old ways. We were reminded that respect, hard work, and family were more than just words. They were the foundation of life. The men and women in the village came together again, not in perfection, but in understanding. And while we could never forget what had happened, we knew that the future could still be brighter, if we chose to rebuild from the right place. As the years passed, the village began to change again, this time for the better. The younger generation, now more aware of the mistakes of the past, began to grow up with a different mindset. The girls no longer looked at the city life with the same longing. Instead, they worked in the fields, studied in school, and helped their families. The men, who had once given up on marriage, now looked at the women with respect again. There was no longer a rush to shine, by any means. The young girls understood that real success came from patience and hard work, not shortcuts. Ada stayed in the village, but she was no longer the center of attention. She had lost much of her pride and ambition. She helped with the younger children, offering advice when needed, though it was often taken with hesitation. She had learned, like so many others, that life wasn't about quick fixes or shortcuts. It was about the long road, about growing slowly and steadily. Ada often spoke to the girls, warning them of the dangers of seeking quick success. I've been where you want to go, she would say. And I returned empty. Our village was never perfect, but it had found its strength again. It was a place where young girls and boys could learn the value of hard work and respect. Weddings began to happen again, slowly but surely. Families grew. Our market was full of people who traded, helped one another, and made a living from honest labor. The beauty of our village was no longer in the clothes or phones, but in the peace that returned to our homes. There was no more envy or competition. What mattered now was the future, and the people we would become. Today, when the elders gather, they tell the story of what happened. They tell it to the young girls who are just starting to grow up. They remind them of the dangers of looking for shortcuts and the importance of building a future with integrity. The young ones listen, some with understanding, others with doubt, but we all know this: our village will never forget the lesson. We learned that pride, respect, and hard work are worth more than any quick promise the world can offer. And as long as we remember this, our village will never fall again. Let me know in the comments your thoughts about this story. Subscribe for more interesting stories.